In the heart of the Nevada desert, hidden from prying eyes and encased in layers of advanced security, Area G stood as one of Earth's most protected and enigmatic bases. The sprawling complex was newly constructed, boasting state-of-the-art technology and spanning a space the size of a small city. It was a place where humans not only delved into the mysteries of the universe, but also prepared for the unpredictable dangers of extraterrestrial life. Thousands of soldiers and scientists worked around the clock, separated by strict security clearances, each of them harboring secrets they could never share with the outside world. The facility's towering walls and fortified structures reflected its unique purpose, to safeguard humanity from the unknown. Inside Area G, rumors spread quickly among the personnel after an unexpected meeting was called by Commander Joshua Kingston. For the nearly 1,000 people stationed there, a gathering of this nature only meant one thing: trouble. Known for his unyielding discipline and stern demeanor, Commander Kingston had a reputation that struck fear into even the most seasoned officers. The crowd gathered in a vast, dimly lit hall, murmurs filling the air until the room fell silent as Commander Kingston entered. "Today, I will share news of grave importance," he began, his voice firm yet filled with tension. "Area G is a fortress, a symbol of Earth's strength, but even the most secure places can be vulnerable. Intelligence reports indicate that we might soon face a direct threat. From now on, everyone must be vigilant. Avoid all unauthorized interactions with outsiders, and trust no one who doesn't belong here." He paused, letting his words settle into the minds of everyone present. His gaze hardened. "Those are your instructions. Now, engineers and scientists, you are dismissed. Soldiers, stay where you are." Once the hall was emptied of civilians, Kingston addressed the remaining soldiers, each one standing rigidly at attention. "The safety of Area G and everything we protect here falls on your shoulders. If an invasion occurs, your orders are clear: eliminate all hostile entities without hesitation. You are the last line of defense, and no mercy will be tolerated. Do I make myself clear?" The soldiers' voices rose in unison, affirming his command. Commander Kingston looked over them one last time, then turned and stormed out, leaving the soldiers with the heavy responsibility of his orders. Among them was an 18-year-old private, Albert Wisdom, one of the youngest recruits ever assigned to Area G. He was still inexperienced, barely more than a boy, yet now charged with defending humanity's secrets against an unknown and potentially deadly enemy. As the night deepened, Albert prepared for his late-night shift, his mind racing with fear and anticipation. Standing in his watchtower, Albert scanned the barren landscape. The desert stretched endlessly in every direction, cloaked in shadows. Thoughts of Commander Kingston's grim warning replayed in his mind. He tried to steady his nerves, yet he couldn't shake the sense of foreboding that clung to him like a second skin. Hours passed in silence until a faint glimmer of light caught his eye. At first, Albert thought he was seeing things: a brief flicker on the ground, hidden near the perimeter wall. Curiosity drove him to his binoculars, and he peered through them, focusing on the area where the light had appeared. His heart leaped as he realized what he was seeing: two figures, cloaked in the shadows, with an unmistakable shimmer to their skin. They were not human. Without a sound, Albert descended from the tower and made his way toward the mysterious intruders, his every sense heightened. As he approached, he could see the two figures more clearly: two alien women, distinct yet eerily beautiful, with an otherworldly glow to their features. One of them held a small flashlight, its beam casting strange shadows as she moved it about. They looked up, freezing in place as Albert stepped into the light, his weapon drawn. "What are you doing here?" he demanded, trying to keep the tremor out of his voice. The first alien raised her hands, a gesture of peace. "My name is Zoki. We mean no harm," she said in a calm, soothing voice. The other, who introduced herself as Boya, mimicked her friend, her hands raised in surrender. Fear flashed in their eyes as they looked at Albert, understanding the risk they had taken by entering Area G. Zoki spoke again, her voice soft. "We're here on a mission from our home world. We were sent by our commander to gather information. Specifically, we need the layout of Area G. We wish to work towards peace, not conflict. Albert's mind reeled. He knew that even speaking to these aliens, even allowing them to stand there without alerting the base, was a serious violation of protocol. And yet, something about them disarmed him, melting his initial distrust. A strange empathy surged within him as he listened to Zoki's words. "Follow me," he said, almost impulsively, and turned to lead them back up to his watchtower. The climb was silent, the only sound their footsteps on the metal steps, and once at the top, Albert motioned for them to sit. "Explain yourselves," he said, his voice steadier this time. "Why would you risk coming here? You know what we could do to you." Boya exchanged a glance with Zoki, then spoke. "Our world is in turmoil, and we're running out of options. Earth's technology could mean salvation for us. If we have the layout of this facility, we could help create a diplomatic relationship. But we had no choice but to come in secret. Our people don't know how to communicate with humans yet." Zoki leaned forward, her gaze meeting Albert's. "You have a kind heart, Albert. We can sense it. You're not like the others." Her words were gentle, filled with a warmth he had never heard before. Albert felt his defenses weaken as he listened, caught off guard by the unexpected praise. The two women continued, nearly in unison. "If you help us, Albert, we'll do anything you ask in return." Albert hesitated. The stakes were high, and he knew he was risking everything. But the allure of these two alien women was unlike anything he had ever experienced. He made his decision. "If we can spend the night together, just the three of us, until the next shift change, I'll get you what you need." Zoki and Boya exchanged a look that seemed to carry entire conversations in a single glance. With a slight nod, they agreed, and a calm, almost relieved look softened their faces. They moved closer to Albert, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly warmth that made his pulse quicken. He guided them to the far corner of the tower, where they could sit without being spotted, casting only faint silhouettes against the night sky. The quiet of the tower felt charged with anticipation, yet beneath it, Albert could sense a strange gentleness that put him at ease. They talked softly at first, Zoki explaining bits and pieces of their world, details that filled Albert's imagination with vast landscapes and civilizations so different from anything on Earth. Boya chimed in, describing how their people had been watching humanity for generations, learning from a distance, but yearning for a connection they'd never been able to establish until now. Their voices carried a melodic cadence, each word lulling Albert further into a trance. As the conversation drifted, he found himself letting go of his guard, feeling more comfortable in their presence than he'd felt with anyone at the base. It was as though these women had stripped away the heavy burden of his duty, leaving only a young man who wanted to understand and be understood. Hours passed in a kind of dreamlike blur. Zoki leaned closer, resting a delicate hand on his arm. Her touch was unexpectedly warm, a sensation that sent a shiver up his spine. "You're different from the others, Albert," she said softly, her eyes fixed on his. "You have a kindness that many of your people lack. It's rare, and it's beautiful." Albert swallowed hard, her words piercing through his carefully maintained walls. He could feel his face flush under her gaze. For the first time, he felt truly seen not as a soldier or a protector, but as a person. Boya, noticing his reaction, smiled and reached out as well, brushing her fingers along his hand. The gesture was small, but Albert felt an intense warmth that spread through his whole body. The three of them sat in silence, savoring the quiet intimacy of the moment. Albert was struck by how easy it was to feel connected to these two strangers from another world, as if some invisible thread had bound them together across the vastness of space. Finally, Zoki spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "We're grateful for your trust, Albert. It's more than we ever expected." Without thinking, Albert found himself leaning in, his hand moving to rest over hers. I don't know why, but I trust you too. Maybe it's because, well, you don't look at me like I'm just a soldier. You see me as more." They both smiled, understanding clear in their eyes. In that moment, Albert knew he would do whatever it took to protect this connection, this fleeting, precious night that felt more real than anything he'd experienced before. As the night deepened, they shared laughter and stories, exchanging glimpses into their vastly different worlds. Zoki described the art and music of her home, while Boya spoke of the intricate politics and alliances that governed their society. Albert found himself enthralled, drawn deeper into their stories, feeling as if he were on the edge of understanding something profound and beautiful. The closer dawn approached, the stronger the unspoken bond between them grew. Albert felt a mix of emotions. He couldn't fully understand excitement, wonder, and a fear of the unknown. He knew that when the sun rose, they would leave, and this strange, beautiful connection would become a memory, something he'd carry with him in silence. But in these final hours, he pushed those thoughts aside, focusing only on the warmth of their hands in his, the gentle smiles they shared, and the words that lingered in the space between them. Time seemed to stretch as if granting them a reprieve from the inevitable separation. The darkness surrounding them in the tower felt intimate, as though it shielded them from the realities that waited outside. Zoki and Boya leaned closer, their expressions soft and intent. Zoki's gaze held a tenderness that felt both otherworldly and deeply familiar, as though they had known each other in some past life. She moved her hand to his face, her fingers tracing his cheek gently, leaving a trail of warmth that made him shiver. Boya reached over, her hand resting on his shoulder, a silent reassurance that they were here with him, sharing in the gravity of this fleeting moment. On our planet, we have stories, Zoki began softly. They tell of souls that find each other across time and space, who recognize each other when they meet, no matter how different they are. Her voice was barely a whisper, each word spoken as if it held ancient significance. Albert felt his heart ache, a mixture of awe and yearning. He wanted to ask what these stories meant to her, whether they were simply tales or if, somehow, they believed in them. He wanted to ask if she thought their meeting was something more than a chance encounter, but the words caught in his throat. Instead, he looked between them, his expression filled with questions he didn't know how to ask. Boya seemed to sense this and leaned forward, her forehead resting against his. "Albert," she murmured, her breath warm against his skin. "This night will live in our hearts. You've given us more than we ever hoped to find here." They stayed close like that for what felt like eternity, breathing in sync, each heartbeat shared in the silence. Albert, unable to resist the pull any longer, wrapped his arms around both women, feeling the strength and warmth of their bodies against his. There was something pure in the embrace, something that transcended words or explanations. Slowly, Boya pulled back and looked deeply into his eyes. "Albert, you have a bravery that goes beyond following orders. You're willing to risk for the things you believe in. I will remember you for that." Albert's heart pounded at her words, at the sincerity he could see in her face. He had always thought bravery meant obeying orders, pushing through fear to do what was expected of him. But now, here with Zoki and Boya, he felt a different kind of courage, a courage that defied duty and protocol, that allowed him to connect with others against all odds. Suddenly, Zoki leaned in, pressing her lips gently to his. The kiss was soft, lingering, as though it held every unspoken word between them. Albert felt himself melt, his thoughts scattering as he sank into the warmth of her touch. When they finally parted, Boya leaned in as well, her kiss equally tender, filled with a quiet gratitude that spoke louder than any words could. As they sat together, leaning into each other, Zoki traced patterns on the back of his hand, a gentle movement that felt like a silent lullaby. The night was winding down, the stars beginning to fade, and they all felt the shift in the air as dawn approached. "We must go soon," Zoki murmured reluctantly, her fingers tightening around his. "But we won't forget this. You have our gratitude and our respect." Albert nodded, a lump forming in his throat. He didn't want to say goodbye, didn't want to watch them disappear into the shadows, becoming just another memory he'd carry alone. But he knew they were right. Dawn was fast approaching, and with it, the return of duty and danger. With a deep breath, he reached into his pocket and pulled out the folded blueprints he'd risked everything to retrieve. Holding them out to Boya, he met her gaze, his expression both determined and resigned. "I promised you this. I hope it helps bring peace. That's all I want." Boya took the blueprints, her expression solemn. "It will help more than you know, Albert. It may be the beginning of something that could change both our worlds." Zoki placed a hand over his heart. "Keep us with you, Albert. We'll carry this night with us, always." He watched them rise, his heart heavy with the knowledge that this was the last time he'd see them. They shared one final look, a silent farewell that spoke of promises and memories, of everything they couldn't say aloud. Albert wanted to hold on, to ask them to stay just a little longer, but he knew it wasn't possible. With a bittersweet smile, he whispered, "Take care of yourselves. And if you ever need help again, you know where to find me." Zoki and Boya nodded, their faces filled with a mixture of sadness and gratitude. They descended the steps of the tower, disappearing into the early morning shadows as the first light of dawn crept over the horizon. Albert watched until they vanished from sight, a strange ache settling in his chest. As he stood alone in the tower, the emptiness of their absence felt vast and cold. He reached into his pocket and found the small crystal Zoki had pressed into his hand. Holding it up to the light, he saw it glowed faintly, a reminder of the warmth and connection they had shared. Albert closed his hand around the crystal, knowing it would be his silent secret, a keepsake of a night that had forever changed him. As he returned to his post, the world felt different, his heart carrying the weight of memories that no one else would ever understand.